right, so it is Tuesday, the 13th of April, and I am opening the Finance Committee meeting at 6:01 p.m. Tamika, just so you know, Pete O'Malley is here. He's just having some technical difficulties logging in. All right, so first thing on the agenda is the minutes from April 6th.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of April 6th.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, then let's take a roll call vote. Okay, Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
Dave,
Lucy, or I?
Ted,
Purcell, aye.
Narwhal, aye, unanimous. Next item on the agenda are the minutes from the April 8th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of April 8th.
I second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
Dave,
Lucy, or I?
Ted,
Purcell, aye.
Narwhal, aye, unanimous. Okay. So guys, it's now, floor is now open for the Finance Committee to have any discussions regarding the budget.
I have a question for Ron, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
Ron, the last couple of days, I was approached by several department heads from the town by email and phone. Some of them were very disappointed in the cuts that we had to make, and some of them understood that finding, $400,000+ is difficult. The only problem is all of them were telling us that you were very disappointed in the Finance Committee and you thought that we were making a lot of cuts in the wrong areas. So my question is, this is upsetting. So I wonder, if it was up to you to make these cuts and you were in charge of everything, where would you come up with these cuts from?
Hold on one second, Ron. I got to get you unmuted. Hold on. Ron, you should have gotten a note that you can unmute there.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'll tell you very clearly the cuts that I'm very disappointed in. All the ones that I discussed at the last meeting, I got to admit that a number of cuts were, as we discussed them, they were kind of pulled off the table and we said we'd get back to them. And then when I got the sheet this morning, all of those cuts were in the sheets that I got. The cuts that I'm particularly disappointed in are the ones that deal with the snow and ice, where we're cutting amounts of snow and ice that frankly are actual costs that we're just going to pass the buck to a future year. I'm very disappointed in those particular cuts, and I stated so at the meeting, and it was discussed at my department head meeting today. Listen, I don't have a beef with the Finance Committee making cuts. I only got it down to 250,000, and the simple fact is that 250,000, the cuts of that 250 or 260,000 level are miserable. And there was nothing good about them, and I understand the difficulty that Finance Committee has in making those cuts. But a couple of cuts that bothered me was the secretary for the town administrator kind of just disappeared. We had discussed it, and it was put kind of on hold for later discussion, and then all of a sudden I found it in the report that was given to me. I don't understand why that position is less important than any other secretary in any other office. But I would also say this, I don't have a solution for that last 260,000 to figure out where to go. So I don't begrudge the very difficult decisions, and I've said that over and over again, that the Finance Committee has to make. I don't know, and I guess my question back to you is how those cuts that were kind of put aside for later discussion, like the secretary, like the town clerk assistant position, all those things were kind of like, okay, well, let's not discuss them now. Then we kind of never discussed them, and then they kind of ended up on the sheet. So that was my disappointment. I don't have some great answer for you. I wish I did for that 260,000 cuts, that they're all miserable. And I completely respect the fact that the finance board has to make those cuts. Now, to your comment about department heads, they are angry at the cuts that I suggested to the finance committee, and they're angry at the cuts that you made. It's having a very negative effect on the morale of employees. But I will also say this, I think they all recognize the fact that you don't have a lot of choice, that the cuts are things that they hate, but no, any more than me, nobody has a solution to how to make up that last 260 or so $1,000. So that's where I am today. I am disappointed, truthfully, that the board doesn't vote. We still haven't had a vote. I got the list of cuts today. I guess I make the assumption that you guys support all of the cuts that I got in the finance sheet that I got today, but I didn't ever hear a vote about that. I guess my question back to you is, do you guys approve all the cuts that you guys made, including snow and ice, including those things? Because I never heard a consensus on the finance committee at our last meeting that everybody was on board for those cuts.
We don't usually vote until the budget is fully cut, so it's not like we vote on every line item. That's why you haven't heard a vote yet, because we're still off. And you said, going back a little bit, you're saying that the department heads understand. I would say from the conversations that I had, a lot of them don't understand. So
Yeah,
I think
well, I'd say this, they understand you have to cut. I don't think they understand or like the specific cuts. But I in my discussion, because I had to meet with the whole department head team, Karen had asked me to get impact statements. First I took the sheet that was given to me this morning of all the cuts. I went through them with the department head and asked them to give an impact statement. I created it like an impact statement form for them to fill out so that they could give us an impact statement on each of these cuts. I'm not going to tell you that they understand or like it, but I think they understand that the finance board has to make tough choices, and they don't like them, but they get there's a deficit. I mean, that's as much as I can say.
I will say one thing. I think we are all in agreement here, but I will take a vote just to make sure. But the cuts that are currently there, if the department heads want to move them to a different line item, I don't think we have any objection as long as the amount stays the same. So I will take a roll call vote on that. Okay, so go ahead.
Madam Chair, I guess I'm only been around for a little over a year and a half, so I'm still, I'd like to claim newbieism a little bit. And I guess I'm not really sure what the role of the finance committee really is. I think we're making recommendations. I think we review what's been presented as potential finance budgets for each one of the departments. And we're using an objective opinion, objective eye, the reasonable man approach to be able to say, this is where we think these things should be or could be. And that we then take and we turn that back once it's done and we do get this vote and we say that we recommend, because we're not going to approve these cuts. I don't think that's our charter. We can recommend this approach to the budget. Once we do that, then it goes back, I believe it goes back to the town administrator, who then takes it back to the department heads, and between those folks, they come up with what the final budget that will be presented. So we have basically two ways to go with the budget. We have to be balanced. And either we get balanced by increasing revenues, and that's what the 2.5 override is on the warrant and then on the ballot, or we decrease expensive if that's what in fact is the situation, that the two overrides fail. So given that, there should be two budgets prepared. Ron and his department heads have the budget done. That's the first one that we saw. And then that gets it to $500,000. And then at some point in time, if we decide that we're not going to address it anymore, the second budget has to be prepared to say that we get to a balanced budget. Now, I don't want folks to be able to think that I'm trying to shove down anybody's throat what I think that their budget should be, because I really don't. I think that the department has a much better feel for whatever it is that they should be spending to be able to serve the needs of the community. And so I would trust them in whatever they said. I think that that once they make that decision, whatever it is, then as Ron was saying earlier, the impact statements, I think, are going to be very critical. I saw Anita's document today, and I thought it was superb. Her assessment of what's going on and what the impact is going to be, I thought it was very good. So that's just my comment. I'm not looking to be a do or say anything more than that. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairwoman, would you like to address Peter's question or would you like me to?
I will address it. Peter, our job is to recommend a balanced budget on the floor of the town meeting. That is our charge. That is what we need to do. We have gone through, we've gone through these cuts. They can move from departments, they can move from line to line, but unless they come back with another magical place of money, we have to recommend a balanced budget. That is our charge.
But couldn't Ron and his department heads decide that the amount being taken out of police is too much and we could take a little bit more out of Department B someplace and shift things around? So all we're really doing is we're recommending potential areas where there may be cuts, but is it, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but isn't it the department head and the chair and the town administrator's responsibility to be able to come up with what those cuts are?
No.
No?
No.
We need to be able to be specific.
Yes,
Okay, sorry about that.
yes. So
Question to
the,
you, Madam Chairman.
go ahead, Ron.
So I guess and I'm a little confused, I got to admit, because this is not the process I'm kind of used to. So the budget you gave me today with the recommended FinCom cuts.
I gave it to you yesterday. But
Yesterday, yeah, I'm sorry, yesterday. At this point in time, is this a recommended FinCom cuts moving forward, or what exactly do I have? Because they're not voted on. I've got a list of cuts that I think you guys have all discussed.
Okay.
But I assume that.
Give us, if you give me a few minutes, we're gonna get all these squared away. We've got one other thing to do, and then we'll go back and we'll get to what you need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would like to make the motion that the finance committee vote that if a department head disagrees with where we put the cuts, that as long as the cuts are the same as what we've put on this, and once we vote on it this evening, that they can move it wherever they'd like on their, amongst their department, but the cuts have to be the total.
Second,
Okay, so let's take a roll call vote. Peter,
O'Malley, aye.
David,
Lucy, or I?
Darren,
Ross, aye.
Ted,
Purcell, I.
and Narwhal, aye. Okay, so Ron, that just lets you know that once we get to the final number tonight, they can move it amongst whatever lines they'd like. Okay, so guys, tonight we have just a little bit left to do. If you look at the bottom, I think it was 8229.14. I think, hold on, I gotta pull it up over here. I think everybody saw my,
Karen, you gonna open that up? You gonna open the worksheet?
I don't have it on my Chromebook.
Okay,
I'm hoping everybody saw my, hold on one second, Ron. I hope everybody saw the adjustments to the revenue.
Yeah.
yep,
Okay.
Yep.
Those adjustments were made after having a conversation with the town accountant. So that helped save us from having to cut even further. And that would at least saved, what, 68?
68.
$68,000. So, you know, having that conversation did save us $68,000 before we had to cut something else. So that was at least worthwhile. Okay, go ahead, Ron. Hold on. You got to wait till you're asked. Hold on, please. Thank you.
So just a note, I think I sent out a note from the assessor department that there was a mistake in the calculation to get her back to last year. Before you get to the total, we might want to make that small adjustment.
Well, I was just gonna say at this point, they can just take that, I'll make sure that I bring this up to the board. So the Board of Assessors said that their secretary did get a raise in October, a cost of living raise. So when we moved her down to last year's numbers, we cut her. So it's up to the board as to what they want to do. Do we want to leave that cut there and they can just move it to a different item? Or do we want to take it out and have to find it somewhere else?
How much was it?
I'm trying to find that now. Give me a 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm not that fast. It's like $2,105.24.
Well, it's got to be balanced by the end of the night.
Yep,
Yeah, one way or the other. I mean,
Yeah.
you can add it to the 89 or keep it where it is.
you guys got to give me your ideas.
All right, so if what we're doing is we're saying that we will provide a bottom line number for each one of the departments, and the departments can move it wherever they want,
Yes,
then I would say that we just add it to the cuts and then let the department decide where it needs to go.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
yes.
There's a question from the audience asking if department heads will have the ability to address FinCom tonight with questions.
Yes, we just need to complete, we've got to get to a zero balance. And then at that point, we will take questions. We've got to finish this because we need to start moving forward with impact statements, getting it out there so that we can start doing what we need to do to get the town educated before town meeting. Okay. So we have,
2,100.
so do you want to leave that there or do you want to,
I would see if we can put it towards the 89. I would. if
so
that's-
you're saying take that out?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have. Yeah, I'm just trying to get the exact amount. 10,334.38. Any ideas as to where you'd like to see that get hit? You have to get
You got any
to,
ideas?
you have to get to zero tonight, gentlemen. So I'm just gonna find it here. 'Cause it's here. So.
We dug everywhere. Where do
We
we
did, but
find it?
we don't,
I know.
unfortunately, I'm with you.
Do we have a
Rainy day.
catch-all area?
No,
Could we make a catch-all area, say, let's take it out of, I know, selectmen. There's not enough money in selectmen, I know that, but I'm just using that as an idea.
okay.
What about reserve fund?
There's nothing that says we can't reduce the reserve fund.
Reserve fund's what, 25 right now?
25. So we could take the full 10,334 from reserve fund. And that would be what we'd have. We'd have the difference.
I don't know where else we can take it out of without
I'm fine with that.
you guys.
I'm fine with that.
Last time I suggested someone give us recommendations, I was told I wasn't doing my job, so.
But you can do it to me though.
Okay, so I'm then gonna take the 10,334 out of reserve fund. And now that gets us. I believe that gets, okay, it's within 38 cents. So we'll take another 38 cents out of it. Okay.
Good idea.
All right.
Okay, so now we are at a $0 budget. So if each department head who would like to speak would raise their hand, we will admit you into the meeting and allow you to ask your questions.
Somebody's chatting down there. Who's that?
That was Joe earlier.
Is Joe there?
So Joe, do you want to speak? Okay, could you, yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, just a couple quick questions on snow and ice, and I won't belabor the point. What we did with snow and ice, we looked at last year's budget, and we level funded the entire budget and moved money from other accounts such as fuel, machinery maintenance, and overtime to shore up a very weak snow budget as it was. I just want to make sure before those recommendations were made, people had a good fundamental understanding of what we did there. Could you talk to your members and make sure everybody clearly understands that?
Certainly. So gentlemen, what Joe did is he was trying to move the expenses that truly do occur on those lines into the appropriate place on snow and ice. By taking that away, that does mean that there is a potential with the winter that we could expend those funds, deficit spend, and need to fund that line, those lines.
So I guess the only question would be, whoops. No,
So I
guess
get
the
my point is simply this, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure I'm clear, and I'm trying to follow procedure if at all possible. So basically, the snow line items that you cut or propose to cut, and I understand you're going to give us the freedom to do that, represent a net increase of 0 for last year's budget. Does everyone have a fundamental understanding of that? So those weren't new charges. They're new
Exactly.
line items. We took it from other accounts. I want to make sure everybody has a good fundamental understanding of that.
Absolutely. I guess the question that I would have, Joe, is if there was what would you recommend otherwise? If the numbers still need to be able to be where they have to be, what would you recommend?
Well, a couple things I want to call out. In an average winter, even with what we proposed, you're still going to be in deficit. You're not even close.
What you have in there now, or with the adjustments?
With the adjustments, if it doesn't snow very much, we'll be okay. But again, I just want to call out, you're proposing making a $60,000 cut to DPW to cut all of the money that we put in snow and ice, but the total budget is a net increase of 0. I just want to make sure everybody has a good fundamental understanding of that. So we're clear on that?
Everybody please answer.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I wish we had a different way of doing it. I wish we had another 60 grand to be able to say, here you go, but we don't. It's not there.
Well, I'm going to echo what the town administrator said, and so we're clear on that. All you're doing is moving the can to next spring. You're probably going to end up with a bigger significant deficit, assuming we have typical Rutland winters. And I would put some token monies in those accounts because you can't just deficit spend them from 0. I did reach out to the to DOR and got some guidance when I prepared this budget in the first place, and I'll make that available if it helps you, but you can't just go to 0 with them. Do you understand that as well?
Okay, so if we put $10 on each one of those lines, would that be enough?
I don't know. I'm not going to speak to, I'll try and make a recommendation similar to what.
No, I'm trying to ask, I know that's not going to be enough to fund the lines, but would that be enough to deficit spend those specific lines?
Unfortunately, to the chair, unfortunately, the guidance isn't that specific. They don't give you an amount like that. They ask you to be fiscally responsible. You should be putting some monies there. And if we have to take it from some other part of DPW, that's fine. But just be cognizant, the guidance is to be fiscally responsible. And they're very specific on how you can deficit spend snow and ice and how you can't. So I'll try and get you a number that I think is appropriate and reflects the cuts you're trying to accomplish.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay,
Okay,
so
my recommendation, my understanding.
could you move the microphone closer to you so that? Thank you.
From what we just voted on was to tell everybody that we need to cut 60 grand out of your budget. It doesn't have to come from the snow or ice line budget.
No.
Right.
So as long as that message has been given out clearly, I don't know what else we can do. I understand his frustration. Joe, I understand it. I don't know what else to say. You don't necessarily have to take it from snow and ice, but unfortunately 60,000 has to come out of your budget somewhere. It's unfortunate, but I don't know what else to do.
Go ahead.
No, he wants to talk.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Through the chair, could you give the total number of what we've been asked to cut from DPW? Because it far exceeds $60,000.
Yes, it does. It's just, yeah, I'd have to go through line by line. So highway administrator is 49,547. Highway construction and maintenance is 1,500. Snow and ice, 59,500.
Do you have a total?
No, that's all I've got, because I've got it all in one big spreadsheet. Can you let Ron speak, please?
I just want to make the other board member aware, it's well in excess of 100,000. Money for a department that makes up 5% of the tax revenue. So it is what it is.
So in
I got-
my calculation today was around $110,000.
Thank you.
I asked for someone to ask about streetlights. Did that get cut out?
We got a note regarding that. I thought all of us got it. I'm sorry if I didn't send it.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Joe.
Okay. 3 things have happened. All of the streetlights in town were upgraded to switch them over to LEDs so they'd be more efficient. The cost of operating those lights is around 15% from what it was a couple years back. We also got a sizable rebate of around $15,000 that went to the general fund, I want to say about a year and a half ago, for making those upgrades. I did reach out to National Grid to find out how we were doing with our performance, and I sent that along to the chair. In addition to that, I asked the questions about what it means to try and get the lights shut off and what their policies are. And I would offer, I'm going to give you the following analogy. It's very similar to purchasing a car and then leaving it in the driveway and not driving it because you don't have any fuel. You still have to pay for the insurance. You still have to pay for the car payment and keep it registered, but it doesn't leave the driveway. And what I mean by that is we'd still have to pay to have the lights on the poles. And we would still have to pay some maintenance. The only thing we wouldn't be paying is the electricity. And there would be a charge associated with turning them back on. If we were to turn off the street lights, we'd have to leave them off for a year. That's National Grid's policy. And because power use, the overall power use for the town affects everyone's rates. If we were to try and permanently shut off any lights, we can only do 1% at any one time because it actually drives everyone's cost up. What I've asked from National Grid is what it'll cost us to get those turned off for the year. And once I have that, I can forward it on to the board. but I don't see a giant cost savings. And if anything, you may ultimately drive people's utility bills up. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Joe.
Do we have any other questions out there that I don't see?
No one has raised their hand, but I can see.
Okay, so I guess at this point, what is everyone's thoughts? Do we want to bless these? What do we want to do?
Well, I don't know where else we could get any other money. Anyway, we say this every week, and everybody's upset with the finance board because we're cutting the wrong spot, but yet nothing stands out on where we need to cut. So, you know.
Well, in all frankness, I think there has to be some balance, because we seriously have some commitments, some state law commitments on maintaining roads and stuff. And at some point, I have to draw a line in the sand as to, we have to honor the state law. It's just that simple. I can't not plow roads. I can't not fix potholes. That's the law. And at the rate we're going, I'll be barely able to do that. By means of example, we have 12 plow routes. We can staff 9. And out of those 9 employees, only 4 of them are permanent highway employees. We're pretty tight as it is. Those are the real.
We still have the same issue, which is, where do we cut? We go to the police department? Do we go to the fire department?
I'm not suggesting that. I just think where your core services are, and that's where you have to figure that out. If the cuts are that, again, I can't do my job and not plow roads. I can't not fix potholes. Those are some core things I have to do as a public works department. Other departments, I can't point you in that direction. But at some point, I have to just call it out.
All right.
Understood.
I understand that, Joe, absolutely. I think for us to sit here tonight then, and with this coming up and the select board telling us we're not doing our job and we need to get this budget to them, and we can't get a budget to them, so.
Select board did not tell us we were doing our
Oh.
job. A member
Oh.
of the select board said.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know.
There was no vote.
Then I think it's gonna be pretty hard to agree on this budget now. We can't, it's not gonna find $50,000 more or 100,000 change things and put it somewhere else in the next 10 minutes. That's not happening. At this point, we worked over this budget for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and it took us this long to get to the point we're at. So, I don't know. Where we're
I
at.
do think there's some genuine merit, and I'll be quiet, in trying to let the department heads try and figure out where they can make those cuts. I genuinely appreciate that. And I think that that's a productive turn of events. My only concern is somebody has to really prioritize core services. And I don't, that's not for me to make that recommendation. That has to come from the town administration and the elected officials.
So, Joe, you're putting together an impact statement. I trust.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And that becomes, I mean, obviously we're looking at the warrant article and then the ballot article on the override. I think it becomes critical that the kinds of things that you're talking about now, you can display, and Ron will decide how it gets communicated to them.
No.
We'll be making,
What?
we're going to be posting those impact statements.
Oh,
giving them
yeah.
to Anita. Yes, we will be getting those on Thursday. We will be putting them together. We'll be sending them to Anita. Ron is away on vacation next week. We cannot wait till his return. We have to
Okay.
get them done.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I wasn't aware.
No, I agree that the impact statements are critical. But I think the only thing that could slow that process down is if any of the department heads, including myself, have to modify to come up with that $110,000 in cuts. So our impact statements may look different as a result of what we propose.
So we've just given you the latitude to look at your budget and say, you recommended this cut, we would prefer to take it out of here. We need to give you some time to do that. So I think one of the things we need to decide now is that for our next meeting Thursday, is that not enough time? Because you're right, your impact statements would hinge on where those cuts are going to be made.
I would, personally, I would yield to the town administrator. He's the one who gives us the guidance on that. And if he wants it ready tomorrow, it's going to be ready tomorrow. Probably we end up doing both. One, what the department head proposes, and one, what's been proposed. What do you think, Ron?
So through you, it's your man. Through you, Madam Chairwoman, this question, I gave, I created kind of an impact form and sent to the chair that I'm expecting on. I told all my department heads I wanted to have them fill it out by the end of the day tomorrow. I am going to have to, in the morning, let them know that they can adjust within their budget to get to the total amount that you guys have proposed for each budget. So they're going to have to make those adjustments and then do the impact statement based upon those adjustments, because I didn't know that up until this evening. The plan was then to present to the finance chair the impact statements, and I was going to ask the chair, what's the plan once we get the impact statements? I don't know if the chair wants me to work with her. The finance board is just going to deal exclusively with what they're going to do with those impact statements. I imagine that they're going to be put into some kind of format that allows them to be distributed at town meeting. And I don't know if there's intention of having a discussion with the media.
Ron, we
Prior
have
to
to get
town
them
meeting.
out. We've got to get them out to Facebook pages. We've got to get it onto the town website. We've got to do all that. We can't wait till the town meeting. We need to get the word out now and spread the word that this is a very difficult year. And here's the cuts that will need to be made.
So thank you, Madam Chairman. I was kind of wondering exactly what the path of that was going to be. So it's your intention to take those impact statements and turn them into some type of document we can use on all of those pages. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, I had sent a press release, kind of a more general press release to the selectmen tonight for their review, and told them that if they have any concerns, let me know today, and tomorrow morning I'll put it out. I'd be more than happy to read that press release to the finance committee if you would like, but it's kind of my intention to at least kind of put out to the general public the overall issue of what's going on. I do want to keep you guys informed, so if you do want to hear it, I'd be happy to read it to you.
Go ahead. Please, if you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. So, and again, I haven't gotten, and I work for the Board of Selectmen, so keep in mind, I wanted them to review it first because they're my bosses, right? But it's a press release. It'll go out as of tomorrow. Rutland faces serious reduction in town services. That's the headline. The town of Rutland is developing its fiscal year 2022 town budget. Without a drastic reduction of town services or an override, the town will have a deficit of approximately $500,000. That matches the deficit to the override question. A major reason for the deficit is the cost of education. In fiscal year 2021, the school assessment increase was $679,123, or 5.42%. And the proposed increase for fiscal year 2022 is $639,897, or 4.85%. Proposition 2.5 limits the total amount of property taxes that the town can raise each year. Rutland Town Administrator Ron Sanangelo said, as school costs go up, we simply cannot afford to properly fund town government due to the limits of Proposition 2.5. These are some of the options that the citizens of Rutland can consider. They can vote against the school budget increase. They can vote to approve an override, or they can vote at town meeting to eliminate town services. Another budget issue is that the fiscal year 2021, the town used one-time revenue-free cash of $405,000 to balance the budget. This caused a structural deficit that moved into the fiscal 2022 budget. The town, in order to meet the FY 2021 school assessment increase filled the gap with one-time revenue. We do not have enough free cash this year to close that deficit. Some of the reductions being considered by the Finance Committee include the police budget will be reduced by 81,697. Now, these are the numbers that were given to me on my sheet today or yesterday. This will result in a reduction of 7 part-time police officers. The fire budget will be reduced by 31,900. This will result in a 20% reduction in part-time firefighters. The planning budget will be reduced by $41,253. This will result in eliminating the full-time planner.
No, it doesn't eliminate the full-time planner,
Well, it does, but it leaves a part-time planner, I guess is what it
Right.
does.
but you
So I
need
can
to
put
say
it,
cuts the full-time, you cuts the planner, town planner to part-time.
yeah, so I can add and make it a part-time position, right? The library reduced by 52,754, therefore eliminating all library aides. The Council on Aging, and I'm a little confused on this one. The Council on Aging will be reduced by 11,203. This will result in reducing the hours of the outreach director and the services she provides to the most vulnerable community. I'm a little confused. I think you guys left some money in there for like a part-time outreach director, but I was a little confused by the way it was set up.
I mean,
Department of Public Works will be cut by 110,547, the answer to Joe's question, thereby reducing the ability to maintain and clean roads. The town encourages citizens to learn more about the budget and looks forward to a discussion of these issues at the town meeting scheduled for May 8th. Now, they may not print this, but this at least gives them the basis for some type of article to write.
Council on Aging thing is a question to me.
Hold on, I gotta find it.
Yeah, I'm a little confused if you guys, I think you guys left a little bit of dollars in there to have a part-timer of some type. Actually, she's not full-time anyway, she's part-time. So I think you reduced her from so many hours down to so many hours, I think is what the net result of what you did is. But
Karen, can I make a comment while you look that up? And then I think Joe had his hand up.
Just so you know, there is nothing, the funds that are left in there are the unemployment funds.
so you completely cut the outreach director.
Yes, if
This
you
is-
look in the cell, you'll see that we took the 17,190 and added the 6,800 that you said would be what the cost of the unemployment would be.
I believe
And
that's
that may be, I just saw that you did separate unemployment cuts at the bottom of the document. That's
Yeah,
what
this-
kinda confused me, but
yeah.
I understand. In that one area, you left unemployment in line. So that's
Yeah,
completely cut,
yeah.
okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Ron, I thought that read pretty nicely, actually. One thing that I've been struggling a little bit with is I've sort of tinkered with a first draft of what we might use to publicize some of these cuts is the term structural deficit.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of people aren't going to understand what that means in those words. So I might just qualify it with funds that are not covered by revenue or something to that extent, just as a qualifier for that.
Yeah, no,
So
I
the-
understand. And there's a little bit of a more complicated term, but yeah, I'll try to work it to clarify that a little bit better. But basically it's a deficit caused by non-reoccurring revenues is another way to say it.
Yep.
So if we are going to have impact statements and publish them on the website, should that be a reference in Ron's note?
Well, I don't want to put it, because this is going to go out like tomorrow. So until we have something up, I don't want to put any link or reference to a website. This is just the first. We can do other press releases, other articles. I suspect that, here's what I suspect. They're probably unlikely to write it as proposed because usually newspapers, they want their reporters to actually create a story. So they may use this and call up the chair of the finance committee and say, what do you think about the deficit in the town? They may call up the police chief and say, what do you think about cutting 7 officers? So this gives them some basic facts. And after that, I suspect that they're going to kind of create their own story around this. But I mean, I wouldn't mind if they put this in, but then this is going to be, I would think, an ongoing story that is going to keep developing from now through the town meeting. That's what I would hope.
Okay, thank you.
This is call it serve one is what I would call this, just to kind of get it out there.
Someone had another comment somewhere?
Joe's raising his hand.
Okay, Joe, could we open up Joe, please?
So
Leo.
why is the biggest cut DPW? For 5% of the budget. 5% of the tax budget. Why is the biggest cut DPW? I'm just curious. It's not across the board.
Joe, I can try to help you with that. We took as big of, unfortunately, cuts, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong. We took the biggest cuts we could without losing personnel. And with the fire budget and the police budget, we've taken about as much as we can do before we lose full-time contracted union employees, as the same as it is with your budget. I don't want to go down that path, but that's where we stopped. Am I saying it right, Karen? I just, one of the things I want to bring out, Joe, and this whole mess that we're in because of Wachusett in the school budgets does not bring me any joy. And the fact that some people on here maybe think that it's the finance committee's fault. The only thing we've done, unfortunately, is we've cut people and services to this town, which I've been living in for 50 years, and I don't know where else to turn. And finance committee, what I wanted to say, and I need Ron to say it somehow, and I don't know how we can write it in there. The town of Rutland didn't make this mess. What we did is we're trying to fix it the best we can. And I know that cuts aren't going to be fun, but we tried as a board or a committee, excuse me, to not eliminate any full-time positions of contracted union employees or department heads to the best of our ability. And I don't know of any other cuts, and I understand your pain, Joe. I don't know where else to go with this. And I feel
Well,
he's going
I
to
thank
lose
you
it.
for your kind words. It's just, it sends a very clear message.
Well, part of your cuts too are you're moving a half employee to water and sewer, and you're moving the temporary clerk to water and sewer. So you're in a different situation where some people who do spend their time over at water and sewer, and you're moving them there.
Well, yeah, I've said it before. We have used DPW staff to shore up water and sewer. It's almost like subsidizing those funds to keep rates down. So again, we're doing two things. We're moving that cost onto water and sewer ratepayers, and we're going to end up with a bigger snow deficit than we've had in some time. So I understand it's a short-term fix, and I just want to get that out there. But I wouldn't be doing my job to my staff and people I work for if I didn't just call that out. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Ron, is there some way you can politely put in somehow in your statement to the press that we didn't create this mess, we're just trying to fix it? I don't know how to say that in political ease.
When you say that, I think you're trying to say the town side of government didn't create this mess, and saying that this mess is created by the school system, I think is what you're trying to say, right?
Correct. We did not create this budget deficit.
Well,
In the town side of this, if the school system had been fiscally responsible this year, we wouldn't be in the pickle that we're in right now. I don't know how else to say it.
so I'll say this, Darren. This is I want to be clear about this, and this is not a one-year problem because of the deficit that was kind of put into last year's budget and funded from free cash. So it's not a 1-year problem, it's a 2-year problem. And I suspect, and again, I wasn't here, but I suspect that because the school system was asking for such a high assessment last year, that in order to try to meet the needs, as they described it, of the school system, we decided to fund it through free cash or such. So I'm not sure cuts shouldn't have started last year and not just all been pushed to this year. But it is what it is. It doesn't kind of matter to look back now because the problem is here, you know?
The unfortunate part of what you're saying is, and I wasn't a member of the finance committee last year, but I sat diligently at the meeting. It would have been last year in this position. We had enough free cash to do what we had to do last year. Whether we agree that it's kicking the can down the road or not, I can't see how we're gonna cut services and have $400,000 in the fund that we used. So we have used every bit of money we can this year to try to prevent what we had to do. And you keep going back to the statement that it should have happened last year. Well, can you cut town services when you have a bank account worth $400,000? I assume, and I'm not speaking for them, the finance committee didn't want to do that last year, and that's why they did what they could. And at the town meeting, I distinctly remember several members of the finance committee speaking up with the Board of Selectmen, trying to tell everybody we were going to be in this predicament 1 year later, and here we are. And that's why I go back to I don't know what else to do, and we're trying our best, and I'm not gonna, the finance committee, nor the Board of Selectmen, nor you, we should take this brunt together, not pick sides, and try to do the best we can.
Well,
Because if it gets to a point where we're picking sides and we're in the middle of a big fight on the town meeting floor, he said, she said, we're never gonna win.
I agree with you completely on that. And that's why this press release really focuses the issue of school spending and how that's really impacted the town. That clearly is in the press release. The whole first part of it talks about the school assessments and the cost increases. And in the second the paragraph just expresses the fact that, you know, we had the deficit from last year. And even then, I blame the deficit of last year on the school system assessment for last year. So I don't think that this in any way, this press release is written in any way is critical of the town side of government. It's really focusing on the problems of I'm not gonna say increased assessments. In my opinion, the outrageous assessments of the school system, not just in 1 year, but you got to remember too, Darren, that while a lot of us feel that way here on the fiscal side, there are a lot of parents out there who think that the assessment for the school system was just fine, and they voted that way, and they'll probably vote that way again this year, a lot of them. So, you know, I also got to be at least somewhat fair to those parents who believe that the schools should be funded the way they're funded. And, you know, that's a reality, I guess.
Ron, I have a question for you with regard to the press release. You've mentioned on a couple of occasions that other towns in the district may share some of the feelings and be in a similar position. Just want to throw out, kind of ask the question, might there be any point to talking with other town administrators about whether or not they're going to do a press release and either timing them to coincide or maybe not coincide, whatever might be a better way to approach it?
So thank you. That's a good point. And let me say, I think we're late to the party. I think that, and I know I've had conversations with Mitch about this. A couple of towns have already been in the newspaper talking about this. I think Holden specifically was one of them. I've been constantly leading the charge with other towns to coordinate them on this school issue. So I'm the new guy in the block, so to speak, and I'm the one coordinating all the meetings of the town administrators and managers. But there were a number of articles, according to the chair of the finance, the select board, and I haven't personally looked at them, but our press release is probably, I think, going to be the third such generation of an article in the media about this issue. The Holden, I got to give Holden a lot of credit here because, as you may recall, and again, I've learned a lot in a short period of time, but the issue has always been sort of Rutland and Paxton have been the two towns that have been trying to vote down school budgets, and Holden has not been with us, and they've been voting it through. Had numerous discussion with the town manager of Holden, Holden came extremely close to putting an override on the ballot themselves. The select board are outraged at what's going on. The select board are now in the fight. They're suggesting such thing as putting this on the agenda at every select board meeting going forward about the issues of the school and how they're over assessing the town. As a matter of fact, Holden today, Peter Lukes, the town manager, asked me today to see if one of our selectmen would serve on a regional task force involved in schools to look at budget and issues revolving around the school and the regional school agreement issues. The chair of the select board, before I left, had said that he would be willing to serve on that area board to represent the town, and I'm waiting to see if other selectmen are interested as well, because there's only one spot. So I've spent more time than I ever thought I would in trying to coordinate what's going on in all the towns. Clearly, 3 towns this year are going to fight the school budget: Holden, Paxton, and Rutland. Sterling and Princeton are not going to fight the school budget. They have the funds to do it. They're the smallest towns. They can afford it. So at least this point in time, they're not making a big effort to fight the school budget. So we need 2 of the 3 towns I outlined to vote down the budget. Now, I want to make one more comment, and I don't want to take up all the time here. My meeting with area town managers, I was told that you could not recommend a lower dollar amount budget. So if the school budget is 15 point something million, I was told that we were not allowed under the school agreement to recommend a lower amount. I talked to the town attorney on that, and I was told that Rutland tried in the past and it didn't work. I had a phone conversation with Lauren Goldberg, who's the top attorney for Copeland and Page, who disagrees and says that we have to present the budget that was given to us by the school committee, but then a citizen can get up and recommend a lower amount for the assessment, and it can be voted on at town meeting. If one other town votes no, then the budget will go down and it'll have to go back to the school committee for reconsideration. What would happen then is they've got to get one town to agree with a new number. So they might say, let's say we say $400,000 less than was proposed. And Paxton had voted no too, and they say 200,000. If they increase or lower the assessment by 200 grand, they get Paxton to buy in, well, then we're out on our own. It would be adjusted by whatever amount impacting Rutland, but they could try to divide and conquer us by getting one town on board of the 2 towns that voted against it and then get what they want. So, but I think they would have to go to what they call a 1/12 budget until such time they could get resolution, on what the towns agree on for our school budget.
Karen, I got one other thought. A wise person that I used to work for said, don't just come to me with complaints and why you can't, but come with solutions. One of the thoughts that just kind of kicked into my head as you were saying that is last year, the finance committee had said to the school committee early on that we could afford X amount of increase in the school budget, but they put forth Y amount, and we couldn't afford that. And that's part of the reason why we're in this position. And when we tried to articulate that at the town meeting, I think it wasn't well received. It was a little bit late at that point. I wonder if perhaps adding something into your press release that if the amount of increase from the schools was a certain amount, that would be affordable by the schools. So someone could look at that and say, the town's not just anti-education, but it's, here's a solution, and throw that in front of the people a little bit, start to get what that number might be.
And then I truthfully, I don't really know what that number is. Previous to all this kind of coming down, I had a discussion with Daryl, and they had, if you remember, I said in 2021, they asked for $679,000. And I told Daryl, before we even had what they call a budget roundtable, that we had a $400,000 deficit from 2021, that we needed a budget down closer to a $400,000 assessment than a $679,000 assessment, right? That's what I told Daryl at the roundtable. We explained to Daryl and the school committee, we couldn't afford even the assessment of last year. So what was the assessment? $961,000. So my message clearly didn't sink in, because 400 and something thousand is a long way from 961. I told him
We could pin 2.5% as that number.
yeah. So I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it's clear that the school committee and the school administration ignored completely the warning of what was coming and just did what they wanted to do, regardless of what I said. The chairman of the board of selectmen said the same thing at the roundtable meeting. It was like talking to deaf ears. It just had no impact. So we tried really hard, and I discussed it with all the area managers. I got all 5 managers to say at that budget roundtable that they had to cut spending and they couldn't give us the increase of last year. Every manager in the district basically implied that, and they ignored it all anyway.
Unfortunately, we're going to beat this horse around and around and around until the school district learns financial responsibility. One of my fellow board members said, and maybe brings his budget in at 2.5%, which is still probably hurt us, but at least it would be in line with what everybody else has to do. And I can understand that. I don't know what we can do, Ron.
Yeah.
It never goes backwards. I'm going to tell you, in my 40 years of going to meetings, it very rarely goes backwards. It usually goes up. We don't get grant money that they get back to us. We don't, if we make a cut, they make a cut. They add money so they can do what they did this year. We can't play on a level playing field. And until, unfortunately, I don't know how we change what everybody here knows. We can't go back ahead. Their agreement is locked in, like we're never going to change that agreement. We can try, but they will beat us in court. I liked your idea, but once you read through it, I want to use a couple words that I can't use here. We're never gonna win. So I don't know what else we do, Ron. I feel your frustrations. There was many years on the fire department, and Joe, before Joe even knew, back in the day, he wasn't in Rutland, he was in Worcester. We cut things from the police, the fire, the DPW. We even shut the streetlights off. That's why I remember shutting them off. Now, Joe has said that it's not a good thing, but we have taken hit after hit. It goes in a cycle, and we're in the bad cycle again. And I don't know how we're going to get out of it. Maybe if we get some new revenue stream, like a big housing project in town or something like that, on some town land, maybe that'll help us out, but that's probably going to be a one-time fix again. But I don't know how we're going to get out of it. Karen's been around here for 9 years on this thing, beating her head against the table. She's got a dent. She's hit it so many times. I don't know what else to say.
Just one point to that, Darren, right? So in talking to the managers, because the school budget has always been well over 4%. as a district, forget about just Rutland, over 4%. So a lot of the managers have been encouraging the school district that they want to get the budget under a 3% increase. And in fact, it is under 3% this year. But what is not considered is if the state of Massachusetts, they cut their grant money to the school district by over $1 million. So even if you increase spending by only 3%, you still have to make up that $1 million in lost revenue, right? So 3% is fine if you get grant money from the state and break even or get a little extra. But 3% doesn't work if you lose $1 million in state funds. And that's another part of the big problem with the school district. And you're right, I'm frustrated. The Board of Selectmen is extremely frustrated because the school district agreement is damn near impossible to change under the way it's set up. And, you know, the Board of Selectmen make a point to me, and I can't argue with them, that, okay, we have the override this year and we pass it. We're gonna be in the same boat next year, because next year the school committee is gonna ask for another $1 million. And then what do we cut next year? You know, I mean, it seems to be a never ending process. And that's why I'm glad the task force at Holden set up. Maybe they can make some inroads in that, you know?
I do have one question. Last night, there was a public information hearing on the dispensary that's coming into town. They did say it was going to be coming into town somewhere January-ish. Just curious, I didn't know about this until last night. So, I mean, I knew, but I didn't know when they were coming in. So should we be taking some of that revenue into account, or maybe?
You gotta wait till they sell product, and God knows how long that could be. They're not even in construction yet, but eventually you'll get 3% of the gross revenues. But Karen, I wouldn't put any in because it's not even built yet. There's not even a stick in the ground. You can't start taking revenues until we actually know when in fact we'd get some and what they might look like. So no, the same thing is true of the 55 and older complex. You know, right now we they have at least, we originally had a deal for about 88 units. Now they're talking about putting in 142 units. That will increase the revenue to the town on an annual basis, and that's a real positive. But again, you know, they haven't even given us a detailed design plan, so we can't count on any revenues for that. But those are two positive things for the future of the town. But I would bet we're a year and a half at earliest to deal with either of those.
So,
And the dispensary is going in on Main Street behind the plaza that Blair owns, in the back of that. And that's cultivation is what that is. And then across the street, there's going to be the retail dispensary across the street from that. There's two actually different host agreements that are in play.
I would like to get a vote on what we have to go forward. I know none of us are happy about it. I'm not asking for a woo-hoo. I'm asking for that we're going to stick with this, or are we going to come back and do something different, or what would somebody like to do? But I think we need to move forward. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, with clarification, the vote would be to accept the bottom lines of each department as totals, not the individual line items, so that the departments have the ability to do what you guys suggested.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. That would be my point.
Mhm.
But if something comes up between, just a point of clarification, if something changes between now and the town meeting, can we change this?
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly. If we hear that the budget tomorrow is going to give us an extra $6 million, yep.
Well, there are some potential things, right? So there is potential that the state, some of the budget committees have already met, and they are recommending giving more money to municipalities as part of the state government. But there's no impact as to individual municipalities or how much we'd receive. So that revenue could come in, and maybe it helps us. If it gave us 100 grand, we could get rid of 100 grand in cuts, right? So that's one potential. And then secondarily, I don't think this is going to come soon, but the American money where me and Karen have been talking about using it to pay down debt, that 1.9 trillion, if that came in and they had some regulations, if all of a sudden we got those soon, we might be able to do some other things to reduce and get rid of some of these expense cuts. So there's possibilities out there, Darren, but there's nothing solid right now we could talk about. And as they come out, I'll let you know.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to make a motion that we move forward with the recommendations of the Finance Committee until the town meeting, unless something significant. I don't know how to say the rest of it. Do you know what I'm saying? I would like to move forward with the recommendations of the Finance Committee.
Yep.
That's it.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion?
I have a question. The vote we took earlier was solely to give department heads latitude where to place those. So this is to say those amounts are what need to be cut.
Yes.
Okay. I have one other question.
Go ahead.
How will we come up with the iteration of the budget that goes forth if the override passes?
We have to start that next.
So that's a next
That's next.
step.
That's
And
next.
on some level, we would look at the percent cut that are already being absorbed and
That's the next. step.
extrapolate that out. Okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, is that?
No, I knew we weren't done, but I didn't know if any of what
Yeah.
the motion just made hinged on some of that.
So I think, and please Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't done town meeting in a couple of years, but the budget, we're going to adjust the budget. And at the end of the day, what has to come is you got to look at all these savings you made and you're going to match up those, $500,000 of those savings to the override, right? Because that's got to equal what we're asking the override number for. And the the budget's going to be subject to $500,000 of those cuts will be approved subject to the override passing. But if the override doesn't pass, those cuts will have to be made. That's my understanding of how it's going to look, but we've got to do some work on making it look that way. Is that the way you're thinking about it, Karen?
Yes,
Yes.
that is.
I just
that's
don't know
how
what
it-
that looks
that's how
like.
it- Yep.
Just. No, go ahead. I'm gonna wait just a second.
Sure. Because I'm going to take a roll call vote.
That's fine.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
No.
Okay, so there's no further discussion. What we are voting on is to accept the recommended cuts department-wise, not line-wise, department-wise, that are currently listed here. Okay. Roll call vote. Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
Dave,
Lucy, aye.
Darren,
Ross, aye.
Ted,
Purcell, aye.
Narwhal, aye. Okay,
Karen, if you would just send me the revised thing, whatever I think you made just a couple of revisions and mostly to get it balanced. Just send me those tomorrow. So I have a
Yes.
clearly balanced budget tomorrow.
yes.
Hey, can I also ask you one question, just because I wasn't part of your conversation?
Sure.
That you talked about on the revenue side, it looks like you increased the local receipts amount for revenue. What did
Yes.
Dan suggest could be increased? Did he give you a certain line?
Yes, I sent that to you on the email. I
Yep.
sent you the revenue. So when I sent you on Monday, the budget, I also sent you the revenue changes.
So you looked at not just the local receipts total, did you give me a breakdown? And quite frankly, I've been focused on the appropriation side, not so much the revenue side, but I know it said local receipts and it was the increase in local receipts, but he gave you the breakdown within local receipts of what those increases would be?
Yes, he told me that we could change the motor vehicle excise tax.
Okay.
So we changed that and it's clearly highlighted on the sheet that I sent you. So I put that up to where we were last year. And
I just haven't had a chance to look at it because I was, like I said, was trying to work out the appropriation side today, so I just hadn't had time to look at the revenue piece.
So that was an increase of $62,501. And then penalties and interest on taxes, I added $2,000, so that saved us, from having to cut,
Whatever.
$65,000. So I was, I had a conversation with Dan because I know in the past when we've gotten to that level, we've fluffed revenues. And I wanted to make sure that we had scrubbed the revenues as best we could because I didn't want to see any more cuts if we could hit revenue. So that's why I had the conversation with Dan.
No, I understand, and that's what I would generally do at the end, so you didn't do anything different that I would have did, but that's fine.
Question.
Yes.
Ron's press release tomorrow. This is just a point for discussion. Is there any positive reason for letting everybody know what a $500,000 will cost them on their taxes? Exact numbers. I haven't seen exact numbers yet. I heard approximately. I don't know if Ron or the town accountant, or maybe even you, Karen, know those numbers, but
Ron has a spreadsheet that he was going to be putting up on the website so that people could go in and type in their value of their home to get what the cost would be.
So the way that works, Darren, is the assessor is the person who does that calculation. And the
Okay.
last calculation I did, that I got from him was based on a $400,000 override. So I'm going to ask him to adjust that to a $500,000 override. And then I assume that the assessor is the one that did it for Margaret years ago. So I'm going to ask him about that formula that Karen's talking about, where you could punch in the value of your home and find out what your taxes is. I haven't had that conversation with the assessor yet, but now that I have the $500,000 locked down, I'll start working on that as well.
my other question, I see Joe Buckley's got a question, but Ron, the other question is what the tax increase would be under the 2.5 plus this. I got a phone call the other day from a concerned citizen asking about the override question come up, and I just would like to.
So the calculation will be a twofold, you're correct. The calculation will be a twofold calculation. But and it'll be a different price range of home. The average home in Rutland is about $320,000. So there'll be two calculations. What is the increase in the taxes under the normal Proposition 2.5? And then what's the increase as a result of the override? So that both of those will be there, so citizens will be able to see the full cost increase of both.
Okay. Is it any chance we could see that on Thursday, do you think, Ron?
And I got to talk to the assessor tomorrow about it. And I'm trying to get as much as I can get done because next week I'm on vacation. So I would love to have that ready so that it's up before I leave. That would be my goal. I just, I can't, I got to see how fast the assessor can work.
Understood.
Ron, then I would ask if you could please have him, if he can't get it to you before you leave, if he could send it to me and then I can work with Anita to ask her to post it.
Yep.
Because we don't want to lose a week if we can possibly help it.
And that makes sense, Karen. I will do it. That makes complete sense. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so. So Joe's got a couple of questions. Is everybody amenable to Joe? Go ahead.
Absolutely.
To the chair, thank you. So when we move people from the tax levy side to the enterprise side, we pick up all of their benefits and fringe in the enterprise side. Does that come off of the tax levy side because it's not it's not reflected that way in these current calculations?
The answer is yes. And we'll have to work with Karen to make those adjustments in the healthcare account to reduce that by a little bit. So yes, we can look at that.
Thank you.
So hold on 1 second. 1 second, Joe. So Ron, then that means all the other cuts, we should have their benefits as well.
Well, there's some good questions there. I got it, again, I don't even know these because they're protected by HIPAA. I don't know, you would have to look at the individual employee. For instance, I think there's, other than the one Joe's cutting, I'm not sure if the community outreach director has benefits or doesn't have benefits. I'd have to look at that. I'd have to look at what the way you get benefits. If you have 20 or more hours, you're entitled to benefits, and I'd have to see if any other position is connected. Obviously, the town planner, I think you guys actually cut that to 20 hours a week, so I think he'd be entitled to benefits still if he chose to stay. So I'm not sure we have a clear answer on those things yet until it actually happens. So
How do we scrub that?
the Joe one is easier because we know the employee is just moving. The employee is not really going anywhere. So that's easier to put him into the enterprise fund. The other ones are not so easy.
Just a friendly reminder to the town administrator and the finance chair. We do have a study that's completed. It's in draft form that makes recommendations for staffing levels for the enterprise, in particular the wastewater side, which is grossly understaffed. I've been reluctant to move people to wastewater only because that's one of the highest bills residents pay, but we'll probably make recommendations to increase hours there as well. The only other question I had was, do you see the board or the finance committee considering a hearing for people to field questions on this stuff, or?
You?
That would be, I mean, a public information forum, Joe, type of thing?
Correct. Yep.
Don't matter. I would like to at least have Ron extend it out to the budget, to his department chairs, if any of them. I know Joe is the only one here, but
No,
we've already tried.
there's more here.
There are more here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's others there.
I don't see him.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, there were some forums and when we could all get together in one place at the library. I don't know how that would work or look here, but it's definitely worth considering. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit already at previous meetings. I mean, part of that, we need to really have kind of a public awareness campaign of what is the damage of this budget going forth as it is, the press release being one step of that, things on the webpage, things on social media. And Joe referred to it as a hearing. I was thinking, as a informational session for people on the budget, whether it's, us getting together and laying that out. Department heads, I know in the past, I think I was on a library years ago and we had to do that, and either I or as the chair or Kerry as the department head or both of us read those impact statements, and at least we could put it available.
I didn't have
I guess I would say
We did it with water.
Mitch has got a question there I think is a good one.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I just asked in the chat box, I would like to, I think Joe's idea is potentially good. If FinCom is amenable to it, I would ask that we extend that opportunity to the Board of Selectmen. I could bring it back to our board, and if they're amicable, we could schedule a joint hearing.
Sure.
If FinCom, if through the chair, it pleases the chair.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I can tell you we did it a lot with water and sewer rates, and based on these conversations, we'll probably be doing it again.
So I would comment in this way that I'd be happy to work. I mean, somebody's going to have to present and answer the questions. I'm not sure that everyone should try to answer. I suggest that probably the two best people that know the budget the best at this point would probably be me and the chairman of the finance board. Could try to, at least guide the discussion. And if we don't know the answer, we can refer to specific department heads for the answers. But I would think that it'd be the most logical for me and the chair to kind of work together to kind of host that meeting with the select board and finance board and attempt to do as many answers as we can.
Mhm.
If that's amenable to the chair.
Yeah, I also think that it's important that the department heads be available so that they can speak, because we will not speak with the same passion as the department heads explaining what this will do to them. And hearing it from the department heads themselves will be much more impactful than hearing it from you or myself,
Yep.
because we're not in the trenches every day
That's right.
like these people are, and they will be affected. And it's important that the department heads speak and get their point out to the voters that if you vote for the school budget and don't vote for the override, these are the cuts that are gonna be, and this is how you will be affected.
So you're thinking like a kind of an auditorium setting where we invite anybody who wants to come and we have everybody there? What, I don't know how many people would show up to such an event, but you
Yeah,
have to
I
make the room big enough to.
don't know how many people would show up. I know,
If we used a template perhaps of one slide per department and made a PowerPoint that could then be saved from that and distributed somehow, that might be one way of having all that information concisely located somewhere that people could go through. Because yeah, I mean, you have these things and a lot of times you're preaching to the choir when you have them, but if you come out of it with a final document or some type of package that can be easily shared, that might help as well.
I think that this is gonna be, for lack of a bunch of better terms, this is gonna be like spring training for the town meeting. The town meeting is gonna be pretty much a big fight, unfortunately. I'm concerned that if it is as passionate as we do, we're not gonna be able to go in the school, so we're probably gonna be outside again. I think this is gonna be spring training for everybody to get warmed up for the town meeting, to be impassioned and emboldened to fight the fight and try to do the best we can.
Aaron,
But
the plan is to hold it inside.
There's no way that, Ron, from what I saw last year, there's no way we're gonna have social distancing in that school,
So
3 feet apart from one end of that school to the other. The last town meeting, the one previous to the one we had outside, it was packed.
So
It was completely packed.
So town meetings are exempt, so they're allowed to do meetings. I think the thought process in talking to Seth and them was that they were gonna try to get multiple rooms within the school and have communication devices so that, a bunch of people can be in the auditorium, some can be in the next room over. So that's the thought process right now, because you never know if you're gonna get rain or problems on the outside. So as of right now, the plan is to do it inside and use multiple rooms. That's the plan.
Okay.
Can I ask one more procedural question of the Finance Committee, please?
certainly, Joe.
We're going to be losing some positions here at DPW. I know that we're going to try and keep that personnel and transfer them to enterprise or other solutions. I also know that there's other departments facing personnel cuts of employees. How is that reflected? And I ask that because as we try and rebuild and we try and go forward and you continue this ever ongoing battle with schools, does someone list that, these positions are vacant but not funded? Is that carried someplace? So as we start to rebuild in the future, is that called out? Does someone go through and document that?
The lines on the budget would be empty as not funded, and that would be how we would know that the positions were unfunded. As far as your positions, I'm not sure how we know what positions aren't funded on yours. I know in the past, we've always been told, so I'm not sure, because there's no clear lines. Like most of the ones that we're cutting, there are separate lines in the budget for.
Well, we can kick that to the department heads, but I think it's prudent to include it with the budget documentation so that going forward, we can actually say how many person hours we've lost.
I agree. I agree.
We took it. Oh, we did, okay. Yes, we
I was
did.
like, I thought we took
It was
Thank you.
on the track.
it. No, not a problem, not a problem. I'm like, wait a second, I thought we voted.
Um,
It doesn't take much to derail me tonight.
So, do we, through the chair, Karen, do we have any other important discussions?
Yes.
Tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've all received a copy of the proposed town meeting warrant. We all got it sent to us in an email.
Yep.
I would like to bring up that article. Sorry. So, Article 18 is the revolving funds article. Currently, we have the recreation and safe place listed on the general budget. Okay? So it's listed there as if it's part of the general budget, but yet it's got its own article.
Yep.
I understand Ron's whole belief was to be more transparent, that we have these people, which I think is very transparent when we look at the revolving funds. Putting them in the budget does open up the ability, when someone's looking at this budget, it looks like we've increased two new lines. I would like to make the motion that we remove them off of this spreadsheet and leave them be just in Article 18 on the warrant, because they are revolving fund.
So if I could explain, Madam Chairwoman. So
Okay.
the article money has to stay there because the money that funds the enterprise fund, you remember, goes into the revenue account. So it's still part of the article expenses, so the full article has to be on that warrant article. And it goes, instead of the revenue going directly to the salary, it goes revenue to the town to fund the new funding in the general fund budget. So you have, both are consistent the way they are to do it. So that's why you got to keep those same amounts in both places, because you're still spending the money in the revolving fund, and it's going to, like I say, it's just going to a general fund revenue, that's all.
Right. All I'm saying is that I think this year we are hitting a very tough budget year again. This one tougher than most. And by putting two new line items like we've got on this general fund budget, I'm not saying cut them, because we're not cutting them. They are going to be in their own article. They're on their revolving fund. But I'm saying by removing them off of here, it eliminates the, well, why did we cut $50,000 from water and sewer when we just added the safe place director? I don't want the town meeting floor discussion to get so convoluted that we're having to explain every revenue number and every expense number. We will be there for days.
So
So I would make the motion that we remove them from the general fund budget. It's not cutting them. It's not doing anything to them. They still exist. It's just removing them off of here. It's taking their revolving fund money that's in revenue out. It still leaves us with a balanced budget. Because we will have them in Article 18. And so therefore we are approving their spending, but part of their spending is here and part of I think it's opening up too many questions.
Second.
Any discussion?
yes, Madam Chairman, I understand what you're saying. I'm not gonna go to war on this issue, but if you look at the warrant article, you'll see it just shows a total in the revolving account of how much you can spend in a recreation and the various revolving accounts. And nowhere at town meeting would citizens know that we were funding specifically a recreation director or a safe place director in the budget, because it will show up nowhere. The purpose is for transparency, so the citizens of Rutland honestly know that that's what the money is doing. It's being spent for those positions. So that's the transparency issue. And it makes me uncomfortable that citizens in Rutland, those are pretty significant amounts of dollar, will not see anywhere at town meeting that we're spending that money for those positions. That's why myself and the town accountant felt the transparency is there. And I'll say this, you're right, that it may cause some discussion at town meeting. I don't think it's that complicated, but you are correct. It may cause some discussion and we would have to answer that as to what it does. But I just don't like the lack of transparency in the current process.
It's not lack of, I don't believe it's lack of transparency because we do explain that they are revolving funds. What comes in is what can be spent. And that's how that all works. I mean, we explain that every year on the floor. It's been how I learned about revolving funds. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Therefore, I will take a roll call vote. Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
David,
Lucy, or I?
Darren,
Ross, aye.
Ted had to step away, and Narwhal, aye, so it's majority. Okay.
So Karen, just notate in your budget thing, the reduction of those line items so that when Dan picks it up, he picks up those reductions.
Yes, I will make sure that that is all stated in the email that gets sent. Yep. So Ron, I did hear today that we should hear within the next couple of weeks about how to use the American Rescue Plan funding. I was on a webinar with the Ways and Means Chair.
Well, that's interesting.
I'm hoping that maybe we might get some news prior to town meeting, which would be very nice.
Yep.
I just want to make sure everybody's aware that's what's coming, so hopefully that might help. Ron, when you send this out to your department heads for the impact statement, would you please ask that they let us know exactly where they're going to take these funds and the impact statements to us by Thursday? I know it's tight, but we got to get the word out.
Yeah, no, understandable. That'll be my discussion first thing tomorrow morning with department heads so they understand what they need to do.
Yeah. It's just that way we can put everything together and start getting the word out because there's not much time left.
Yep.
All right, so for Thursday night's meeting, if we can look to see what Thursday night's meeting will be is after we've now gone through the worst case scenario. Now we get the next step, which is if the $500,000 passes, where do those things get added back in? So let's please all take a look at it. I'll send this out to everybody. And if everyone could look and come with some ideas for
Do you-
Thursday.
Karen, do you want to also on Thursday put on the agenda if you're going to recommend various warrants or not, or various articles or not?
We're gonna do that next week because we gotta get these done and then we can move on to the articles next week. That'll give us a night that we don't have to discuss the budget cuts. We can have a night off there. I know they're placing them tomorrow. Unfortunately, we won't have a quorum to be able to meet tomorrow night. So the finance committee members, some of them have other stuff they have to do tomorrow night.
So just to let you know, it's my intention after the Board of Selectmen vote to place the warrants, I'm going to send the warrants to our town council for review of the warrants to make sure they're accurate for town meeting. So that place will go forward. Then if we feel there's any reason that we need to send the warrants to town council, we can do that when you're finished with that process. The motions.
Okay, I'm hearing that Mitch, you have your hand up.
Through the chair, I know that the board had invited FinCom to participate in tomorrow's meeting to place the articles. However, if the board would like to schedule a future meeting, because tomorrow did not work schedule-wise, to discuss the warrant, that's something that we can schedule if FinCom wants to get back to us with a date.
So what is everyone's pleasure? Is it next Tuesday or next Thursday?
Similar again to what we did in the fall. And I will say that I believe as of right now, the Board of Selectmen has a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday as a regular meeting. It is the Tuesday after Patriots Day, which would be the normal date of our regular meeting. So I would probably put it on the agenda for Tuesday if it was amicable.
Well, they're not available Tuesday.
No, Mitch,
No.
you saying you're not available
The
to?
Board of Selectmen has their regular meeting
Oh.
on Tuesday.
No, again, I'm saying that we could, as of now, from a scheduling perspective, the agenda looks light for next Tuesday, and we could schedule both meetings on that Tuesday if it's amicable towards or for FinCom to do that.
That works.
Sure.
That will work.
I can try to call in from.
So if I could through you, Madam Chair, just a question to the Select Board Chair. So on that Tuesday, are you planning to go through the warrants a second time? The article, all the articles, a second time? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm sorry, was that question for me, Ron?
Yeah. I mean, and then that Tuesday when I'm gone, you're gonna just basically replay the articles you placed this Wednesday. You're just gonna rediscuss and answer any questions of FinCom on that Tuesday. Is that what you thought?
Well, I think FinCom was probably going to discuss them prior, but I think what the intent would be for scheduling a meeting would be similar to the fall, where we make sure we talk through any concerns. Wednesday, we have it scheduled to place the articles, and FinCom was invited for Wednesday. That didn't work. I'm only speaking, in terms of my opinion as chair, in terms of scheduling, but I think it's important that both boards work together and show the town that we're working together concerning the warrant.
So the reason I asked that is because it was my intention, after you guys place the articles on Wednesday, to send the articles for legal review. And if you and FinCom potentially, if the Select Board and FinCom potentially change articles, I guess we could just ask the attorneys to review any changes you made at that point. Because we do want to get legal review to make sure they're in the correct legal form, But I think we can send it to them, and then I'm not expecting a lot of changes when you and FinCom meet on that Tuesday. But if there are, we can just have legal review those couple of changes, I guess.
Understood.
Okay.
So is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up this evening in regards to the budget? Mhm.
This is it, 32.
Yeah, that's what we'll work on that as we go.
So I'll say this, Madam Chairman, in the end of this meeting, I want to thank the Finance Board for the work that they've done on this. And I can't say that I'm happy about this process because I hate every minute of it. As I know that all of you hate this minute and that none of us are happy about these cuts. Each of us may be more frustrated over individual cuts than others, but I do understand the work and the fact that these cuts are difficult and that none of us appreciate or support in concept any of these cuts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you please let Joe in, please? Don't be nodding off. It's early still.
It's not really that early if you get up early.
It's late. Come on, Ron, thank you. I'm sorry to jump in last minute. I do anticipate, based on the Finance Committee's vote, to allow department heads to make recommendations on how to accomplish the cuts in question, additional changes to the enterprise accounts. So are you we'll send those on directly to the chair, or do you want those to go through the town administrator first?
If you can send them to Ron, Ron will make sure that we get them all together and it'll make it easier than everyone sending them. I'm hoping that by Thursday we can get them all.
Yeah, Joe, and I'm only
Well,
gonna, by Thursday, they either to me by Thursday or send them to, you'll probably be sending them to Karen. So depends how fast you can put them together.
No, it's not so much that, it's that enterprise accounts could see some significant changes. So I just want to make sure those are passed on.
Thank you.
Just send me a copy, Karen.
Could I have a comment
Sure,
about
go
what Joe just said? This is addressed to Joe. Joe, I think that, I feel your pain, but I also think that this has been a long time coming. I think anybody here would support you. Let's see what happens with what you're gonna do, but I'll support you 100% on what you gotta do, because you
Thank
gotta
you.
maintain what you can, and I'm not, you gotta do what you gotta do in these tough financial times, and unfortunately, it is what it is.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you,
Good night,
Joe.
Joe.
Good night.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn in a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Therefore, we will do a roll call vote. Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
David,
Lucy, aye.
Darren,
Ross, aye.
Ted,
Purcell, aye.
Narwhal, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.